Apologize for the delay. We were giving time for my council colleagues to join us, and we'll begin. For the record, my name is Tanya, or Tanya Fernandes Anderson, the District 7 City Councilor. I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. This hearing is recorded. It is being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV. Again, that's boston.gov/city-council-TV, and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings beginning in April and running through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. You can do this in several ways. Attend one of our hearings and give public testimony. We will take public testimony at each departmental hearing and also at 2 hearings dedicated to public testimony. The full hearing schedule is on our website at boston.gov/council-budget. Our scheduled hearings dedicated to public testimony are April 26th, April 26th at 6 p.m. and June 2nd at 6 p.m. You can give testimony in person here in the chamber or virtually via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using our online form on our council budget review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. When you are called to testify, please state your name and affiliation or residence and limit your comments to 2 minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. Email your written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. Submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on City Council budget process and how to testify, please visit the City Council budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on dockets 0480 to 0482, orders for the FY23 budget, operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits, OPEB. Dockets 0483, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations. Dockets 0484 to 0486, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. Dockets 0487 to 0489, orders for BPS revolving funds. Our focus area for this hearing will be Boston Public Schools operations, including school admission and assignment system, BPS transportation, food and nutrition services, school safety, admin budget, including diversity, recruitment, evaluation, staff retention, and procurement and BPS revolving funds. Our panels today, what's going on? Yeah. Today include, just one moment while we update your names. There was some switcheroo. I got it. Thank you, Nate. That would have been helpful, but now I have it. Nate Cooter, you can give your positions at the beginning when you speak. David Bloom, Sam DePina, Avery Esdale, is that correct? Esdale? Tony Beatrice, and Denise Snyder. Okay. Christine Landry. Christine? Who's Christine?
That's the panel that's sitting up here, but Christine is here in the gallery.
Oh, hi, Christine. Hello again. Okay, we have everyone. When you start talking, you can just announce your positions. That will do. We can, just for the sake of understanding sort of the format to which we function or I facilitate these hearings, you will have a total of 20 minutes for your entire 7 people. And then we'll turn to the council. If it goes a little bit over, obviously, you guys have more people today, it's fine. Or maybe 20 to 25 minutes if that's possible. Then we'll go to our council colleagues first for questions. Typically, I have like 1,000 questions, and if I just cross out, if people are asking my questions, just cross them out so it's more easier if they ask first. And then finally to me, then we'll go a second round, which will entail public testimony if anyone is here or virtual. If not, we go to a second round. They'll ask questions again. The first time is 7 minutes. The second time is 5 minutes. The third round in 3 minutes. And that's between counselors and panelists, and it's up to them to moderate or to ask you to stop so that they can ask their next question if they feel appropriate. So welcome everyone. Obviously, you know, I'd love to start with like a beautiful speech so that you can say, oh my goodness, she's such a wonderful counselor, such a great chair. But the issue here is just that we all care about these issues, and I've been getting emails, particularly about transportation, also nutrition, a big one. So, you know, my questions will reflect that throughout. I won't delay this any further. So without further ado, panelists, you have the floor for your presentation.
Excellent, thank you, and good morning, counselors. And I thought it was appropriate you started with a singing introduction for us this morning because today's presentation is about enrichment, including arts, athletics, and summer and out-of-school time programming.
Thank you for that correction. Sorry for interrupting you. Yeah, I got the update. I think I just have the wrong thing in front of me, so the wrong agenda. And that's my bad, I apologize. So I have the update. Please say that again so everyone can be clear.
Sure. Today's presentation hearing is on enrichment, which includes arts, music, athletics, and out-of-school time, including summer school. And so I have here with me a very talented panel. I won't take up too much time, but did want to start our presentation. I think it's very appropriate that we start this presentation with this statement from the Opportunity Achievement Gap Policy, because what we are doing here with our budget is really focused on expanding opportunities and closing opportunity gaps. Those things that we want for all of our children, including music programs and lively art programs, athletic opportunities. And so today's focus is on how we are trying to close those achievement gaps. Of course, we're able to do that in this conversation because of a 3-year, $100 million commitment from the city, including this council, that is able to allow us to invest in new opportunities and resources for students. And the thing I just want to highlight at the start is that this $110 million commitment is over and above our cost increases, which means that this represents true investment in things for students, resources for students. And we're going to come back this afternoon and talk about social emotional supports, another area where we are closing opportunity gaps. Last week, Farah Asaraj covered our academic vision and the importance of focusing on these core challenges that we face as a district, including mass core participation, academic outcomes, and the quality guarantee. It's in this third bucket, in the challenge of unequal access to quality programming, that this hearing was really focused. And so that's the challenge that we've taken on as a district and that this team is here to address. And then finally, when we talk about our quality guarantee, we talk about it in 4 key areas. The second area, which is enrichment, is access to arts, sports, student government, and safe places to go for before and after school. The Mass Core implementation, which was a focus of our academics hearing last week and our schools hearing, we're talking a lot about it because Mass Core is also an opportunity for us to expand access for students in high school around and make sure that they have access to key programming, including arts programming and physical education, key cornerstones of Mass Core implementation and what we expect all students in high school to have access to. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Avery Ersdale, our Director of Athletics, and he'll take it from here.
Good morning. Thank you everybody for the time this morning. My name is Avery Ersdale. I'm the Senior Director of Athletics for the district. Here on my slide here, I think we've highlighted basically what we're intending to move forward on in FY23. And also some investments that we have with our ESSER fund. But the basis of everything that we're doing is based on access, opportunity, and experience of those participating in the program or expanding to allow more to participate into the program. As you can see, our investment goal, it really is focused on addressing areas that we haven't been able to provide opportunities before or expanding opportunities to new experiences that students are interested in the district. Our 3 buckets in athletics really fall into interscholastic athletics, which is kind of the high school MIA, one school versus another. Our middle school program, which is an internal program that we run with all of our other BPS schools, and then our Special Olympics program that creates some opportunities for other students in BPS. At a high level, we're really looking at next year and excited about the $500,000 investment and really, again, focusing on expanding opportunities through some different sport offerings, looking to expand some access to athletic training for students and the safety component, and then also looking at how we might surround our participants and players with more of the traditional supports that you see across in other areas. With that, I'm sorry, I will pass it on to Tony, and he can go over his slide.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Beatrice. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts for BPS. Thank you for having us today to talk about arts and enrichment. The Boston Public Schools has been investing in arts education really since the year 2009, and that's when the BPS Arts Expansion Initiative began. This is a public-private partnership with investors, funders, and nonprofit partners with 3 big goals: expanding direct arts instruction for students during the school day, building capacity of the district to strengthen school-based arts instruction and partnerships with cultural institutions, higher education institutions, creative youth development organizations, and also building capacity centrally so that we can help all of our teachers with professional development, hosting events, and I invite you all to our Citywide Arts Festival. It's going to be on the Boston Common. It's the first time in person since 2019, and that will be on Thursday and Friday, June 2nd and 3rd. But just telling the story, throughout this initiative since 2009, over 17,000 more students in grades pre-K to 8 are receiving at least once weekly arts instruction, and we've pushed the needle where we have over 60% now receiving twice weekly. And Mass Core numbers at the high school level have gone up, and we're really excited about the new investments for next year, where we're adding an additional 13 plus arts teachers, and some in schools that didn't have certified arts instructors. Additionally, we've been awarded over $4.2 million in ESSER funds specific to capital arts equipment. This is everything from kilns, pottery wheels, new instruments. The majority of our inventory came from VH1 Save the Music Foundation in 2000 and 2001. Lighting systems for our auditoriums, sound equipment, everything you could ask for. So as I stated, we have more arts teachers in the district, but we haven't been able to keep up with the capital arts equipment. So this one-time funding is going to have a multi-decade positive effect. And lastly, just to share, last year, investors partnered with BPS, and especially with our Office of Data Accountability, and did a longitudinal study using data from 11 years showing the impact of arts instruction in BPS. This is really the first study of its kind with that much data, and you can see the impacts within the Google slides. So we're really excited about the new investments in Mass Core specifically for next year, and we have some ESSER funds to help with the arts equipment to help back that up as well. That's our narrative with the arts department, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Hi, my name is Denise Snyder. I'm the acting chief for Family and Community Advancement. I'm happy to be here to talk about extended learning opportunities for our children and partnerships. ELO is a large space, and I want to start with an overview of a few of our programs. The first is Acceleration Academies. These happen during February and April vacation breaks. More than 60 schools participated in each cycle this year. That's about triple what we normally do. They served more than 2,000 students in each session, and we prioritized our English learners and students with individual education plans. This was a $7 million investment, and it was really both educational and, when we talk about closing opportunity gaps, exciting, because they really got to focus on something that was more exploratory and involved investigating and problem solving for our own issues in our own backyard in Boston. Our investment in summer, which is coming up, is totaling about $24 million, and this is a large investment that is much larger than previous years and includes many more seats in many more programs. We have more than 18,000 seats being offered for our students pre-K through grade 12. It also includes an increase in staffing costs, the cost of curriculum, materials, transportation, meals, and more extended day. We also, in our department, cover before and after school programming. This is an area also where I know that we are working towards that high quality guarantee and are not there. In fact, we have ESSER funds dedicated, about $2 million to, I'm sorry, it's not $2 million, it's about $200,000 for hiring a director and another support staff to work on expanding programs and identifying new funding models for our programming. In the next slide, sorry, I have to get to my own next slide, which doesn't want to happen. All right, this is just a quick overview of the budget for summer because it is so large. You can see the investments that we're making in everything from our early childhood programs, K0 to 2, to the exam school initiative, the extended school year, which is programs that call for a full school year for children, individual education plans. The English Learner Summer Program, which this year looks a little different budget-wise than last year because we're incorporating about half the seats into the fifth quarter programming, which is a much more inclusion and inclusive opportunity. The largest bulk you'll see goes to our fifth quarter programs. That includes high school recovery as well. But outside of high school recovery is really a open enrollment opportunity for families to pick and choose where they would like their children to be this summer. And as I said, that totals about $24 million. Why we invest in this is important. I probably don't have to say this, but I will. Research shows, and we have some research, great research from Rand Corporation, that shows up to 2/3 of the achievement gap between low-income students and their high-income peers can be explained by unequal access to summer learning opportunities. So this is where we are making a large investment to close that opportunity gap. And finally, I want to talk just briefly about our partnerships. Currently, we have 658 partners who are registered in our portal, our partner BPS, which is where that connectivity happens between schools and partners. And that funding allocation there is $11.8 million. New ESSER funds totaling $750,000 are earmarked for improvements to before and after school, and this ranges from data collection and sharing tools so that we have improved evaluation, funding to provide technical support to our community-based organizations to help them achieve partner standards, and investments in training partners on quality assurance, and evaluation. So I'll close out at this point and pass the mic to whomever has slide 12.
That concludes the presentation for this morning. Just wanted to highlight that there are more materials available on our website, bostonpublicsschools.org/budget, and as well as here's our upcoming hearing schedule, including a hearing this afternoon on social emotional learning. I'll now turn it back over to the chair for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. We'll go to our council colleagues. And first on my list, I have Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I have a few questions. One is the summer opportunities. I know many times that families would be offered one of these opportunities, but it would be a small time during the day, maybe like 9 to 12 or a small chunk. Will there be transportation provided this summer? And will there be extended day opportunities? Because many times families would opt out because maybe the Boys and Girls Club or the Y offered the whole day that they needed because parents worked. So a 4-hour in the middle of the day was not something that they could access. So if you could answer that question.
Certainly. Thank you, Counselor. The summer programming is this year a blend of opportunities. Families will find some schools, sites, and some programs that include extended day. We will also have some transportation in a limited number of buildings, typically buildings that we've been calling vision sites because they'll host multiple programs. Having said that, what you've experienced this year with, or what we've all experienced this year with transportation and capacity and drivers, we anticipate to be a summer problem as much as it's a school year problem. So we are being very conservative in that offering, but we have expanded. Our extended school year students always receive transportation. We are definitely expanding transportation, but it is limited. It is not what our initial goal was based on what we're seeing around capacity.
And I assume these slides show how many slots are there. Do we have a number of how many students we know will actually take advantage of these slots?
We have, as I said, the open enrollment slots total around 8,000. We have opened registration on April 4th. It'll go through June, although we host site selection in rounds. Right now, we're well over 2,000 families currently registered, and our goal is to fill all the seats. Will we? I don't know. We didn't fill them all last year, and I know that part of that was transportation and extended day. Part of it, though, is also joy factor. I think bringing in more partners, more locations, which this year we are in 59 buildings as opposed to, I think, 30 some odd last year, means that there's at least more walking accessibility opportunities. And as I said, partnering so that, you know, academic gains are really important. Joy is also really important, and partnering to be able to provide tennis and STEAM and sailing and lacrosse, outdoor adventures, zoo opportunities. Doing these things, we think, is also another way to make sure
we'll get more families to want to.
Right.
Yes, many, like, as you know, though, the students on IEPs have to attend, or, right. My second question is about the athletics. I know this came up last week in a hearing, but I knew we were having this hearing, so I'm going to say it again. And my daughter was a student at BLA, so she was able to participate in crew because they did have a partnership with Row Boston. Her junior year on the girls hockey team, they were about to shut down, but their partnership with St. Joe's and Mount Alvernia saved it. So I am a big supporter and understand that partnerships matter, but we are not investing enough in our budget for athletics. I filed a hearing and I talked about it at the hearing last week when we only invest $76 of our more than $24,000 per student. We are investing maybe $20 more and hoping for ESSER funding and others that we know will run out. So I would like you to talk about that investment and if we are going to put more of our budget to these athletics and arts. And like you just said, that students often don't even participate in the needed summer programming because we don't have tennis and art classes and swimming classes and all of these other opportunities for our kids that they do deserve. And if they're only doing athletics for a couple hours, but they're with us for 8 hours during the day, that we're making sure we're putting our money there and not hoping that some sites have partnerships to be able to offer this for students?
Thanks for the question, Councilor Murphy. I think there's a few things here in play. The number from the state obviously is a number derived by dividing what we have allocated and obviously our enrollment in school. So how that actually plays out may be a little different than how the number sounds, but obviously it's not a number that we want to tout and have being what the driver is in our program. I think in terms of the programs and the summer work, our work in COVID really has opened the door, I think, for us to think about how we do our summer program and our enrichment, and really opened opportunities for us to think about the relationship between education and enrichment, and I think some people were creative last summer in doing that, and I think we'll continue to work together to figure out how we can continue to provide more opportunities that
Not just in the summer, though, during the school year. So students at our schools are able to
Yes, so,
opportunities.
so I got off target, I'm sorry.
No,
but
no, it's fine.
I think in terms of the ESSER money and the investments in operating, as we are going through this process with ESSER, knowing that it's not money that's going to be there forever, we are having the conversation around how do we continue to assume some of these opportunities or expenses or resources in our operating budget. So that is part of the conversation as we put things out on the table to go after. But I think it also, while we have the opportunity and the resources are there, we are being very aggressive in terms of, I think, spending and using and trying to get it to the students to provide the opportunity. But on the back end, also being very mindful that we do have to have a solution, and we do have to be discussing how we continue these opportunities if they get started using ESSER money.
And I would just add to that, Councilor Murphy, Sam DePina, Deputy Superintendent for Operations, that we've also done a great deal of engagement with our students, with our coaches, with our administrative staff of the schools to assess kind of what's needed and what's desired. So those conversations have been ongoing and will continue to be ongoing, and where we can make priority shifts and investments, we'll do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to go to slide 9, the Acceleration Academies, February and April vacations. The Kaleidoscope DESI funding is limited to 15 schools, none of them in Alston Brighton. Do we have a list of all the 60 schools that the 60 schools and the criteria for selection, how they get selected, and is transportation provided for the expanded learning opportunities during school vacations in February and April?
Thank you. I'm going to invite my colleague Alba Cruz-Davis to come down to talk a little bit about the success of Acceleration Academies. While she does that, I do want to say that there is a criteria or priority really for our English learners and our students with IEPs first. And then schools are able to look at high-risk students and other populations that they think should be part of the program. I don't have a list of the 60 in front of me, although before we leave here today, I can have it in front of you today. That's not a problem.
So I'm just thinking about a school like the Jackson Man, which is a huge number of English language learners and a high number of kids on special ed students with, especially in the autism track. I'm just wondering, I'd love to understand the distribution of these schools, the selection of these schools and where they are. That'd be helpful.
Certainly. I have lost Alba.
Good morning. Good morning, City
Good
Councilor
morning.
Braden. With regards to Acceleration Academies, so all schools were invited. Last year in February, there were 20 schools that provided acceleration academies. This year, the number was 66 for February, so a threefold increase. Last year also for April, I can't tell you the number off the top of my head, but it was less than 20 for April, and we had 69 schools that participated. The criterion for selection in terms of inviting students, we first started with students with disabilities and English language learners. 80% of the population of students that were invited had to be either students with disabilities or English language learners. With regards to transportation, yes, they were provided with transportation. Each of the schools was provided with transportation. I'm sorry, did I answer all of your questions?
No, that's fine. And in terms of selection, like, do the school sort of, the schools, individual schools, identify those students with most need, and how,
Yes, ma'am.
How are parents involved in that conversation?
So the schools invited the students. Again, the criterion was students with disabilities, English language learners, and then the general population. So parents were involved in that they would know that their children were invited, and also that their children would be provided with transportation.
Very good, thank you. Another quick question with regard to the summer programming. I think we're, where we are at it's the beginning of May. The end of the school year is coming on. It's pretty fast. How accessible is the information about summer programming for families? Like, it's not that my understanding is, and I haven't had time to check it out myself, but my understanding is that the website is pretty difficult to access and doesn't, is not user friendly. And certainly if you're a family with English is not their first language, or don't have access to good, reliable internet, the same old story. How do families learn about the summer programming opportunities?
Sure. So we use a vendor called School Mint, which I believe is used for the UPK enrollment system and some other charter systems. It is not the easiest system. You are correct, but it is very thorough, and it supports all the needs that we have in the enrollment system. To guide families through this process, we have, Alba and her team, just recently trained all of the family liaisons in our schools, and one of their job descriptions is to help families register, so they don't have to do this alone. Their family liaison can help them through it. Many of our community partners who serve our children already know how to use it. They can help them. Our HERN, Homeless Education Resource Network, staff know how to use it. They can help families. So we know it's challenging, and we've looked to provide a really good support group to help families. How you get there is very easy, though. It's right on our website under summer stuff, and people will see it in billboards starting last week. There are billboards around the city, and communication with all of our partners. All of the automated calls, texts and emails home to families, and we will continue this, as well as tabling and leafleting in neighborhoods to make sure that people have the information.
And I would just add that those communications are multilingual, and the staff that provide the support will also be multilingual as well.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, how am I doing for time? I have to run out the door at 10 past 11, so you mightn't see me for the rest of this hearing.
You have a minute. 1 minute.
1 minute, excellent. I can speak for another minute. In terms of partnerships, 658 is a really impressive number. Do we have any quality indicators in terms of outcomes? Do we do some surveying of the student experience? Is it challenging, stimulating, interesting? Do we measure the outcomes? We're investing a lot of money in summer programs. Who are our partners, and what about outcomes?
Terrific. I'm going to say that this year we are partnering with Boston After School and Beyond as our umbrella for many of our partners, and we will be doing evaluations. I'm going to ask Alba Cruz Davis to round that out, because she, to her credit, has been on the ground making this happen.
Thank you. So City Councilor Braden, one of the things that we're doing is, as part of our ESSER funding, We have the opportunity to increase our partnerships, particularly around our community-based organizations, Black and Brown, and small business, which is, as you know, citywide an issue for in terms of partnerships. So that's one of the things that I'm currently working on, is expanding opportunities for community-based organizations to become partners, to meet the requirements as partners, and also evaluating some current partners as part of our ongoing data collection. And as you may or may not have seen from the slides, that's one of the things that we have obtained ESSER funding for and are working on as well, is ensuring quality, not just in like a 360, if you would, evaluation, where we're evaluating the school's experience, or if schools are able to speak to how well their partners are working with them or addressing their needs. And also, as you mentioned, student experience, family experience, and partners' experience with schools. That is our goal.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I didn't get the other half of that. So you do give out surveys? You do surveys on
Yes,
to measure
ma'am.
outcomes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And we will be looking at that family and student experience as well,
It's in there now, or is it a goal to create it?
to create it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you will.
Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the important leadership, Madam Chair, you're providing. Let me go into the summer program, summer investment. I represent the most residents living in public housing of any district councilor. I was in various neighborhoods, South Boston, the South End, this weekend, and some of the young people I was talking to, Black and Brown, living in public housing, knew nothing about the summer programs. I know we highlighted here that it was unequal access to summer programs, but I agree with you. There is unequal access to summer programs, and especially for residents living in public housing. I asked them what their plans were, and they didn't have any, because they didn't hear from anybody at BPS. So that was discouraging for me to hear that. I know we just hired family liaisons. Maybe we haven't caught up to these young students yet, but I hope that's a priority, because it's certainly a priority for me. The Boston Athletic Program, how much are we spending per pupil on BPS student for sports?
I would have to get back to you with an exact number. I mean, we have roughly 5,000 plus that participate across all three areas in a given year. So in terms of being able to project a number that way, I can do some simple math and get you a number.
All right. So,
Sorry, if you just give me one moment, I do actually have that number already for you as well.
is it around $80? Is it higher than that?
It is higher than $80. You know what, if you don't mind asking the next question, and I'll come back and
Okay.
give you the per pupil
Well,
spending.
the research I did, it's around $80 or $85. The state average is over $170. Let me say that again. The state average is over $170. Concord Carlisle School per pupil is $821. We have money for the exam schools, so their kids so they can play sports, and I'm happy about that. But other kids in BPS that don't go to exam schools have inferior athletic programs, inadequate funding, second-rate sports, lousy facilities, lousy equipment. I'm glad we're doing a lot of outreach on Special Olympics and students with disabilities, but I'm very discouraged. I'm being direct, and I'm not happy about this. I'm very discouraged, and the program that we're not living up to, making sure that students have the opportunity to play sports. That's an opportunity for kids to get into a college playing sports, and we're not providing them the right equipment. There was a group of students in one of the BPS schools that were disqualified for playing in a school tournament because someone didn't send their necessary form over. So I really would like, before I vote on this budget, I would really like to know more about the school program, the athletic program. I want to know how much we're spending per pupil. I want to know what the state average is. So Nate, how much are we spending right now on athletics in the schools?
Our FY23 approved budget from the school committee has $98 per pupil for athletics before ESSER investment, with another approximately $1.4 million or $28 per pupil coming on ESSER for FY23, for a total of about $126 per pupil. I don't have the state averages, and I think this panel in particular would agree with you that would be looking to expand athletic opportunities for students, particularly at the non-exam schools, is something that we're looking to do. It was originally going to be part of the second year of the 3-year $100 million plan for us as a district. Of course, we reprioritized mental health supports as a response to the pandemic, and now are looking for that expansion through ESSER, but we'll be looking at a multi-year expansion of athletics because we absolutely agree with you, Councillor Flynn. It is critical for our students, not only those who can get into college and play sports in college, but for the many, many athletes that we have that are doing it purely for the high school experience. We think it's a valuable part of that experience.
On the summer program, will we have counselors, social workers at these academic sessions?
Councillor Flynn, hi, how are
Hi,
you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
In some cases, yes, it depends on the program and what the program has requested.
Okay, my request is if we are providing academic programs at any school this summer, there should be a mental health counselor or a social worker to assist any student that might need it. That might be a good opportunity to find out what's happening in that child or student's life. Might be an opportunity to listen to that student, to partner up with that student and their family to make that student more successful going into the next school year. So my question is, and I appreciate all the great work you're doing, and thank you, but my request is, if we don't have a mental health counselor in every school building this summer, let us know, and we'll advocate for that, and we'll fight for it, because our students deserve that. I don't want to hear all good news coming from everybody all the time for the next couple of weeks on the BPS budget. I want to know what's not working so we can fix things. So as you probably can tell, I'm disappointed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. President Flynn has spoken, and I absolutely agree with him. So athletics is mental health supports. I kind of wanted to hear you expound on that, but I guess maybe this afternoon we can talk more about that. Councillor, thank you, President Flynn. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate the return on investment portion that was added to the arts and music spending slide, which stated that chronically absent students attend school for one additional day compared to when they are not enrolled in the arts courses. So thank you for that. That's great information. Really do appreciate you including it. But with that, I'm just curious that we saw that there was a decreasing overall on arts spending by 2%. and music spending by 1%. So if we're seeing clear advantages to offering arts education in schools, why are we seeing a cut overall on the spending? And who will that cut impact the most? I'm gonna give you time to look for that because I'm not gonna use all my time here. I'm gonna, that's one question. The next question that I have, and this is more of a request, can we get a breakdown of the number of arts and music programming in addition to after-school programming offered at every school? I'd like to see that by the numbers, please. And in terms of partnership, this is one of the things that I have been talking about even before I came onto the council. I had to...
Excuse me a moment, sorry. Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Braden, we can hear you all the way over here. So sorry. I know that your tips are always so helpful, Councilor Flaherty. I wish I was next to you right now, but we do have to pay attention to who has the floor.
Thank you, my love. And I'm just gonna say I get 30 extra seconds for that. And I'm gonna take it.
Resetting now.
Yes. So I'm just curious. Many years ago, I reached out to BPS because a lot of these nonprofit organizations, some of the smaller ones, entrepreneurs, folks who were actually really doing amazing work in the city of Boston did not have access to opportunities to the partnership portal. And I had to create my own fair and invite these vendors to come to BPS to showcase. And this was years ago, so I'm glad that we're catching up to that. But it speaks volumes to the molasses of trickle-down impact. So I'm just curious in terms of investments, what are we doing to ensure that if we're serious about equity in partnerships, that we're not just funneling these dollars to smaller, that we're creating opportunities for smaller folks, vendors, not just nonprofit organizations, but actual entrepreneurs, to be able to be meaningful partners with BPS. I'd like to know what that's gonna look like in terms of outcomes. And I'm gonna stop for there because I know we're gonna have more questions and I wanna make sure that I give you all time to answer those.
So thank you, Counselor. To answer your question on arts and music from the beginning, the decrease you're seeing in arts and music is a function of the closure of the 3 schools that are closing. So the reduction of positions at the Jackson, Man, Irving, and Timilty, if you take those positions out, in the rest of the district, it's
right,
going
but
up.
if we're taking those 3 schools out, wouldn't it make sense for us to invest those dollars elsewhere instead of just doing away with them?
Part of what you're seeing with the closure of any school is the redistribution of resources through our weighted student funding. And so the students that were at the Jackson Man, those resources for music and arts that were part of their daily schedule that will go to for your enrichment block, being able to go and take music, that is funded through weighted student funding. So when we close those schools, those are redistributed to other schools. And then as part of their planning, it may go towards, again, adding specialties, or it may offset some of the costs of that soft landing, that hold harmless that we've talked about over the last few years.
And can you tell me if every single school, all 125 of them, have arts?
So with this new investment, they will at the Mass Core level at the high school. So all of our elementary schools, pre-K to 8, they all have arts teachers. And now with the additional 13 plus positions at the high school level, they will.
And are those investments that are being made through our city dollars or through external partners?
That's through the budget.
Yeah, Mass Core investments at high school are all made through operating the budget you're reviewing today.
So this will be the first year that all schools have art? How many hours?
So,
Once a week?
So I believe right now, all students are receiving at least once weekly, and it's around 67% are receiving
And what's the
twice weekly.
standard across other districts?
Yeah, usually twice a week at the elementary schools.
Yeah, and then
is
what are we gonna
typical.
do to get to that point?
We need to add more.
Yeah.
Keep doing what we're doing.
Okay. I have 2 other questions on the deck, so let's move on with that.
I can address a little of the partnership questions that you've raised. We'd mentioned earlier the ESSER investment in partnerships and expanded learning opportunities, and there's a $2.3 million ESSER investment in positions that will help expand our partnerships in before and after school programs. But there's also that money, and the bulk of that money, because 2 positions is not nearly that, goes into the actual programming, the expansion of partners and sites. And that speaks to slide 11, where we talk about the $750,000 ESSER investment, $750,000, which is earmarked for actually helping our partners or our potential partners with quality assurance issues, helping them be able to qualify to work in Boston Public Schools to meet the standards that we need them to meet.
And then just in terms of just a follow-up, that's sustainability, long-term planning, because these are ESSER funding. So obviously those are going to go away. So what's the plan for sustainability?
Right. We will have to look at how we incorporate staffing, but the training of bringing an expanded pool of partners, we believe is, a time-bound opportunity that we can raise the boat up and have a lot more partners who understand, and we've helped them get to the standards level so that we can provide a quality assured program with more partners.
If I could just add to that, Councilman Mejia, we do, on a constant basis, give referrals from different sources and organizations and people that do offer services for our students. And what we try to do is initiate them in dialogue, have discussion with them. I just had a conversation with one last week and made a referral to about 10 schools with that partners' potential services, and we let them have conversations with schools, and then we work through Denise's team to facilitate those dialogues. I just want to make sure I state that.
Before,
I think that answers the question.
how much time I have? Because I want to make sure no more. But I didn't get an answer to the breakdown of arts and music programming in addition to after-school programming at every school. So if you don't have that now, I'd like to see it at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Mejia. So I was going to wait till the end, and I'm not going to ask questions, Councilor Lujan. I'm going to give you a turn. But this reminds me of the questions that we posed, and it's been on my mind since the beginning of this hearing today. We asked you to report back with a report of services per pupil and also the equity presentation. If you are not able to deliver by the time that you actually say that you will, it's totally okay. You just have to communicate with me. And I have not received anything.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. The equity presentation that you requested was sent over just this morning at the start of the hearing, and we're printing copies of it for you to deliver this afternoon. And there were several other requests, including the per pupil allocation formulas for each of the supplemental positions. We don't have that for you today, I apologize, but we will be following up in the next day or two with those.
Okay. Can it be tomorrow?
We'll do our best.
We're kind of getting to an end, and there's no point. I will delay the hearing. We cannot do it without it tomorrow. Like, do we have, you're on schedule tomorrow, right?
We're not back until Thursday, but we'll definitely have it before the hearing on
okay,
Thursday. That's
good for us then. But we won't have it this afternoon, right? Which includes...
Sorry, I'm finding that very distracting. The mental health team that's here this afternoon is coming prepared to talk about all of the ratios that apply to their work. There were a couple of things on the list that weren't direct mental health, and so some of those will need to come as a follow-up. And we'll try and get those to you tomorrow, but for the ones that directly apply to...
For the equity presentation, when can I have that in my hand? It's being printed to give me, for us to have when?
It's being printed, I think we can try and accelerate. We were going to give it to you before the 2 o'clock, but we can see if we can run it down now.
Okay. Can we have it now?
Do you want to see?
Yes, please. I just think that, I just need you to communicate with me if you're not going to have it, because I did expect both today, but I didn't get an email saying we don't have it. And it just seems like our questions is leading back to metrics measuring, monitoring, assessing, surveying. We can't have this conversation unless we have those answers. If you can't have it by the time that you said you're gonna have it, totally human. We just need that communication conveyed to us. And then for this afternoon, I guess, if we can get that printed right away, we don't even have enough time to assess your stuff because we got it like this morning, your presentation as well. I'm asking that we do this a little bit better, because if we are feeling like we're asking you questions and your response is like, our question is stupid, then because we can all read the room. And so we're gonna have to be very sincere and respectful with each other in terms of how we respond in this communication. So we're all reading this room and we all understand that we're all human beings doing our job. I think you guys do great work. I think you have very little resources. I think you need more money. And we all agree on that. But what we know is that there aren't enough metrics in place and it's not connecting with the conversation in order for us to properly assess. So in the interest of time, we're gonna move on with more questions. But if we can get the information that we've been asking for some days now, that would be really great. Please. Thank you. Councilor Lujan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I second your request. I want to start by saying, commending the Acceleration Academy. I have a cousin who goes to Binka, and all of our cousins were gathering during April vacation, and she couldn't come because she was in school, and I was very happy that she couldn't come. She's an English language learner, and so I'm happy that we are not that we are ensuring that our kids are in school and are learning and are making up for learning loss. So I appreciate that, and whatever the council can do to help further support Acceleration Academy and programs such as that, I'm here for it. I am disappointed, similar to Council President Flynn, regarding outreach. This is always my biggest source of angst with BPS is our communication. So I think President Flynn announced his disappointment, but I want to hear what we're doing to communicate Experience Summer, because if we have all of these wonderful opportunities for our young kids and then they're not taking advantage of it, what are we doing, what aren't we doing in terms of translating, in terms of making sure we're working with our family liaisons, like what are we doing that's working, how do we expand on what's working, and where are we failing? And then related to that is, do we also make sure that charter schools, students in charter schools know about Experience Summer? That's, but I want to make sure that all of our students in the city of Boston are able to take advantage of the programming that we have available. If we don't feel like there are enough seats, what do we need to do? That's the question, first question.
Thank you, Councillor. If we look at outreach, there are a number of things we're doing, and we are always open to more suggestions on this. But we started from the day that we went live on School Mint with the usual automated phone calls home to every phone number we have for every student, to emails and texts for those families. We have used our BPS social media. As I mentioned, billboards went up last week. We're now using a geotagging feature, so if you're passing a billboard, you may end up with a message on your phone that gives you more information or a link to the registration site. Our family liaisons are key to this work. There's a combination of raise the noise volume so people know it's out there, and then there's the how do you actually register in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. The family liaisons were all trained late last week on how to register, and some of our schools, when you talk about best practices, are hosting actual summer school sign-up opportunities. I don't like to use the word school. I think we need to use summer programs, right, and Experience Summer, because it's a more exciting opportunity. But so schools are working, in fact, the liaisons, it's in their job description to make sure that families know how to access summer and help them with that. And all of these things are happening in multiple languages. We did specifically reach out to the homeless educational resource network to make sure that they could hit the ground running first for their families and ensure that they would be able to sign up. And there's nothing like good old grassroots efforts, and we are at everything from the Kite and Bike Festival coming up to events at DSNI this Saturday, to an event at Madison Park the following Saturday. We're everywhere.
No, I'm happy to hear that. The chair will cut me off, and I have more questions. So, but I will say that we have to. Those all sound great. We need to be even better, and I think one of the things we should start doing, honestly, is start riding the bus. And I know it's a capacity issue, but meeting people where they are. And I think, people are using the bus, right? We have great pilot programs that are making the 28, 29, 23 free, right? What if we had BPS liaisons riding the bus? If we know we're riding the 28, we make sure we have folks, liaisons who are bilingual in Spanish, also bilingual in Haitian Creole. Same thing in other neighborhoods. If you're in Upham's Corner, you have someone there who speaks Cape Verdean Creole. I think that's how we meet people where they are and let them know, that human. I thought you were going to say something close to that when you're like that human to human, but I think it needs to be that direct, and I think that's how we need to be using our resources to do community outreach. I'm going to pivot unless someone had something they wanted to add.
No, just briefly, I would add that usually around this time of year, and we do our different pushes of communication. One of the spaces we do is touch base with our city colleagues and other departments to make sure that they're helping us spread the word out. So we'll be connected with the Boston Center for Youth and Families. We'll connect with Sheila Dillon and the Housing Department team. If you guys have some outlets that you can help us,
please share with us.
Yeah, we can definitely do that as well.
Okay. My second question is related to something the chair was mentioning. We need the metrics and the data. So questions I'm interested in. I co-sponsored with Councilor Murphy and Councilors Braden about the hearing on BPS athletics. How many schools have indoor gymnasiums? And can we break that down by for high schools and middle schools and elementary schools? Do we have that data?
Yes, we have it. We probably need to pull it together. We deal with kind of the interscholastic and middle school piece, but obviously there's elementary schools that have those facilities as well. So we can update our document and get that to you.
Yes, if you could get that, that would be great. And even if, there's an auditorium that doubles as a gymnasium, fine, just give us that data. Another question is, how do new programs at a school start? So I'm going to use the BINC example again because a lot of us were there recently. The students will tell you what they're lacking. I was in a classroom and the students were like, we have a lot of students in our schools who could be basketball athletes and basketball stars, but we have no basketball program. And they would love a basketball program. And my heart sunk when they stated that we have people who are basketball stars here who don't know that they're basketball stars. How do we get new programs started? How do we make those decisions? How are they funded? What is the guarantee for sports in all of our schools?
The process around athletics is there's a planning and an initiation basically involved, and in many of those it's where we are, and I think looking at how we start a program and how that fits into everything else that we have going on. But I think the other question that also has to come out and also has to be vetted is what's available and what's the feasibility of what the request is, right? And so if we talk about a school that's looking for a basketball program that may not have a gym that's suitable for basketball.
Which is why we need that information about what schools have gyms and where we can partner and what other resources we can use.
Yeah, so which is constantly always going on. But I think as you see, when you have a gym, the gyms get used. And so sometimes you run into situations where the school that has the gymnasium may have a need just as much as a school that wants to use the gym. So we're open to the conversation. We'll have the conversation. But I think the three things that come into play, obviously, are feasibility based on the facilities, sustainability based on the numbers, and sometimes when you're dealing with schools and enrollments, that piece can fluctuate on a year to year. And also, I think, how we can kind of absorb that sport in what we're running currently in the city.
Thank you. I have more questions, but my time has run out, and on second round, I'll come back. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Councilor Roell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panel for all your work that you do. And I'm excited to see, the investment that's being made in the summer programs and after-school programs. My grandmother used to tell me, an idle mind is a devil's playground, so keeping kids engaged and productive is very important to me. And I think that will help reap benefits, not only for our young people, for our city. Northeastern University, I'm a Northeastern alumni, they had a great program called Co-op, where we had internships, so many different companies, based on our interest. And we got to, learn more in depth, real world on, the things that we were studying, and also, got to earn a little bit of money. Can you talk to me how many summer programs are kind of centered or, have that type of model?
I unfortunately cannot. I think what we do by and large under our program is to work with Boston After School and Beyond, who is our umbrella for all of our partners to funnel through. So they apply for programs under that umbrella. So I'm not sure, we can ask for the data, and it might be something we're able to get as part of our additional evaluation tools that we're investing in this year, because it is an excellent source of an experience for everyone, right? For the student and, well, for the college student and for the students being served. So it's a great example, but I am not sure. I will check with some of my colleagues if they have additional data, but it might be something that we have to weave into finding out and invest in for the coming year.
Thanks, Denise. The only thing I would add to that, Counselor, is that we do have the positions that we need posted, and are always looking for ways to spread the word on how we actually fill those positions. So if you have some suggestions and a way to connect with folks that we can provide to set this up, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I love that, and just kind of pushing that type of programming for our students, 'cause I think it would definitely help them, build a resume, earn a little dollar, and then get a deeper understanding of what they're studying. And the only other thing that I would like to advocate for is, extended hours for our summer programs and our after-school programs, kind of fit the family schedule, family work schedule. That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Rowell. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Eid Mubarak.
Thank you. Eid Kareem.
Very good. A couple questions. Obviously, there's a 2.3% increase in funding for permanent employees. That reflects the addition of more school psychologists, librarians, and social workers. Will any of the new employees be part of BPS enrichment activities?
The part of the increase in the staff that Mr. Beatrice already mentioned is an increase in the number of arts teachers and music teachers at the high school level. So that's part of the Mass Core expansion to be able to do that work. So that does include that enrichment staff. And then there's been a mix of capacity building on both ESSER and on the general funds for our after-school and summer school programming.
And summer is coming quickly. What is our budgeted amount for summer learning and summer enrichment? And what will our marketing and outreach efforts be to ensure students and families know about these opportunities?
Counselor, thank
Good
you.
morning, Denise. Good
How
to
are
see
you? So on the screen right now happens to be the Experience Summer Budget. So we're fortunate to have landed there. It's a $24 million investment this year. This is substantially more than past years. We're going from 30 some odd sites to 59 sites. We're working with 20% more partners. We're serving roughly 18,000 students, or will have capacity to serve roughly 18,000 students, and that's exclusive of job opportunities and internships, which is roughly another 5,000 opportunities for our students. Our outreach, as I said, it's begun 3 weeks ago, and we are in the thick of it now with billboards, with phone calls, with social media, with leafleting, a bunch of events coming up in the future. And I love the counselor's idea of being on buses. So now we've got to look at our pool and see what we can do there. And on the ground, grassroots, are the family liaisons in our schools working with families, whether they're calling them, whether they're hosting after-school sign-up opportunities. You know, we're learning lots of their creative ways. Some schools are hosting their own summer fair, and everyone, you know, with several staff helping sign families up.
Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Councilor Murphy had called for a hearing to discuss the athletic programs at BPS. Can you discuss the $1.5 million increase in BPS athletics, and maybe just give you a quick breakdown? I know that the PowerPoint outlined elementary and JV level investments. Are there any additional investments at the high school level?
Some of the other areas that we'll go into would be the supports. So looking at coaching staffs, you know, we're behind in some of those areas in terms of number of people that we have or specialists that you may have to provide instruction or support around the sport. We're also making some inroads in athletic training and the safety around students. So that piece of the sports medicine piece, somebody to diagnose injuries, help students get back from injuries, or help them get connected for things that are bigger than what the athletic trainer can handle. And then I think the other piece is it allows us to really explore the staff in the athletic central office and make some expansions there to provide some more support to our coaches and to our athletic coordinators and school leaders in terms of just delivering athletics.
To expand on Council President Flynn's inquiry a little while ago, there were student athletes this year that were not allowed to participate. At the risk of BPS thinking that this line of inquiry is potentially inflammatory, it was a local, it was a regional, and it was a national embarrassment that we had student athletes that could not participate on the field or on the court because adults, I don't know what the glitch was. I'd like to hear what happened, and more importantly, moving forward with this budget request, that never, ever happens again to a Boston Public Schools student athlete who wants to compete at their potential and their level, also potentially to compete for a college scholarship or potentially maybe be considered for a professional draft. How we fail those kids, inexcusable. But someone needs the answer as to what happened and make sure that that's prevented from ever happening again.
Thank you, Councilor Fadi, for that question. I'll take that question. So we did look into the matter, and we found out that there was some paperwork discrepancies that led to that incident to occur, and we are deeply apologetic and owned that error, and we've made those communications and known to folks locally, more across the state, and reached out to the other school districts that were impacted about the whole situation. So we did apologize for that, and we regret that occurred. With that, this budget you'll see reflects the addition of central office staff that Mr. Avery Esdale alluded to, and adding additional staffing to his department and team to help oversee some of the daily operations will help alleviate some of that. We've also made some course corrections around the process on how we look at those applications, timeliness, when it happens, how it occurs, and verify that there are additional checkpoints along the way to make sure that doesn't happen again.
And to that point, was it dozens of student athletes, hundreds of student athletes? How many teams, how many programs, how many schools were impacted?
I couldn't speak to it off the top of my head. I'd have to get that information back to you.
And then to dovetail on my colleague's question, Councilman Healy's question in terms of a breakdown, I also would like a breakdown per school of the art budget and the athletic budget for each of those schools. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Flaherty. So just for clarification, IGR did send in a report to us on questions that were answered, bolded questions. I guess this is supposed to be on the equity questions, but I'm having a hard time actually finding the answers. And I'm trying to go like question to answer, and I'm having a hard time. And I'm just gonna say it that way. And I think that at some point, we should probably sit outside of this hearing and just clarify if you need clarifications on the questions. Because, yeah, again, I just don't find the answers. I can't find the answers.
I'm happy do that, I think what I attempted to do when preparing the document that's in front of you this morning is to go through the list of questions, I think dated April 7th, if that's correct, and pull out the ones that were particularly bolded as the equity questions and separate them out into this PowerPoint presentation. So if I'm happy to clarify or the connection in any way that I can.
I think I'll take responsibility on this and say that maybe I'm not being clear, and then we should sit aside, and then I can help with that.
I'm more than happy to.
Okay. And then in terms of the questions that we had, it's to add to everyone's question. Councilor Flaherty?
I had just a question on, I guess, on your question. Madam Chair, you are perfectly clear. And I know this is your first budget. This is like my 20th. And this is what BPS does. They duck, they dodge, they bob, they weave, they slow dance the answers, and they spin, spin, spin. And it's refreshing, quite frankly, Madam Chair, to hear you pumping the brakes in an effort to get actual responses to our colleagues. We have our responsibility. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents and the taxpayers of this city. We're all elected to ask questions and to get answers to approve this budget. It's a pretty big ask, 1.3+ billion with a B dollars. This body, through this chair, and my colleagues respectfully asking questions, looking for truthful answers, kind of getting the swerve. I've seen this movie before, Madam Chair. To your point, you are within your purview, but you're also in your right mind because you're asking questions and you feel like you're getting swerved. This happened. This is an annual event. This is an annual event. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for your help on that. I almost want to postpone. Like, I almost want to say, let's stop and regroup.
Second.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to reschedule this hearing, and we're going to clarify with you what the questions are. Yes, Councilor Mejia?
I have a clarification question.
Yes.
Are we going to postpone this hearing until we could come back with the questions to our answers? And Madam Chair, would you be open to allowing us to utilize the space that we have right now to put our questions on the record?
Yes.
And make sure that when we all walk out of here, everyone understands what it is that we're hoping to get when we come back. Because otherwise, if we postpone and then come back, I'm just afraid that it's going to be a WOT, which stands for a waste of time. So if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I would ask humbly if we can utilize this time to make sure that everyone is clear, and if we need a translator, like if I ask a question and you don't understand what I'm saying, that you ask me exactly what you heard, so that when you walk out of here, everyone is clear in what we're hoping to come back to. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Perfect. It's a great idea. I think we'll go around. Do you want to start with your questions, or do you want to maybe go around the same order?
Oh, damn, okay. I have a lot. But, all right, thank you. Because I just threw this out, let me just think. Okay, so I am curious, you know, you talk a lot about chronic absenteeism, right? And we know that there is a correlation between mental health and programming and the arts. So I'm just curious, how are we investing some of our dollars to support our students who are chronically absent through the funding that you're presenting to us here today in terms of arts, education, music, and sports? Clear? Great. I'm also curious about the sports. $86, is that per student? Is that the breakdown that we're investing for students? Just so that I'm clear, it's $86?
Sorry, our general fund budget per pupil is $98 per pupil.
And in $98, what does that get us? You don't have to answer it, but I'd like to know what that return on investment is. How is it $98 per student for sports? What are they getting for that?
So, Council, just to be clear, the sports offerings for that dollar amount?
$98 a year my daughter gets for sports. Is that what I'm hearing?
The $98 is the average per pupil, so some students who are in more expensive sport may actually receive more dollars than that. Some students who don't participate in sports.
Okay, so then what I'd like to know to that is where are those schools?
A list of we'll provide a list of schools
Who have a higher number of dollars that are being allocated in the sports area.
Great.
I'd like to know that specifically. And then why is that? I'm also curious in terms of the partnership. You know, I do appreciate the effort that is being made. I want data on how many organizations that are smaller grassroots and entrepreneurs. And I also want to know how many dollars those smaller organizations are being allotted. It's great to say that we're making an effort to increase the number of smaller grassroots, you know, BIPOC entrepreneurs, but I want to know how many are there and what's the dollar amount that they're getting. Because it's great that you have some, but if City Year or, you know, After School and Beyond and some of these bigwigs are getting millions of dollars and then some of our smaller organizations are getting $5,000, that's still not equitable, right? So I'd like to know in a deeper dive of what dollar for dollar it looks like. Is that something you can pull? Is that something that you can, like?
I think we can pull some of it. The reality is that Boston After School and Beyond is an umbrella for hundreds of those partners. And so whether or not we have the breakdown of how much goes to each of them individually is something that we'll have to go to Before and After School and Beyond for, I believe.
Yes, so then I think in terms of transparency and accountability, because we are allocating funds to this third-party vendor, if you will, then there is an opportunity and a responsibility that we have to ask them.
Will do.
So that we can get that data and we understand what that return on investment looks like.
Will do.
Also curious about, as part of the Mass Core, we're introducing ethnic studies, right? So I'm curious to learn about how that curriculum will make its way into the arts and music education curriculum. I just think it's important for us to really think about cultural competency in terms of the programming that we're offering our children. So just would like to know what that is going to look like moving forward. After school programming is seeing a 9% increase in funding, and I'm just curious how that new spending will be used and how are we prioritizing that spending in areas that historically lack after school programs. Okay? In terms of partnerships, the McKinley is slated to get $1.3 million in external funding. In addition, $16.5 million of our total special education funding is coming from external partners. And I think this is great that we have a team who is able to secure this funding. I think it's always great for private partnerships. But what does that say about our own ability to use and prioritize our taxpayer dollars to support our programming and our highest needs? So I'm just curious in terms of moving forward, just curious, like, what does that say and how we're gonna reimagine tax dollars to ensure that we are also investing in that? And you don't have to answer that in English.
Well, I was hoping I could offer just a quick clarification about that question to make sure that I'm going to address the correct part of that. The external funds for both the McKinley and the special education dollars are federal entitlement grants, including Title I and IDEA, which is funding for special education students. So that's part of our sort of formulaic budget that comes from the federal government, and it's not sort of private fundraising or sort of entrepreneurial work on our part to receive external funding. It also includes, just the state funding through what we call circuit breaker, which is reimbursement for higher than average special education costs, which is a significant portion of how we pay for out-of-district spending.
Right. So to that point, we always know that there's an ebb and flow in federal funding. So that still begs the question in terms of what are we doing for our long-term sustainability, because we can't always rely on federal funding. So whether it's private, federal, whatever the case is, I want to make sure that we have a plan for sustainability that does not rely on other folks to supplement. And then in terms of the, this question kind of combines what we're talking about this morning and what we're going to be talking about later this afternoon, but I think it's important for us to bring it here. A BPS report in 2021 found that in regards to safe and supportive schools, BPS, quote unquote, K through 12 transformative SEL standards are being rolled out throughout the district and embedded in health ed, physical ed, and the arts. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Could we get an update in regards to how SEL standards are part of our arts and music education? I'd love to know that. And then, you know, because I didn't realize we were going to get this opportunity to put all of these questions on the record, I'd like to allow my colleagues to ask their questions and give me some time to think about other things that I have on my heart. Is that okay?
Thank you, Councilman Hare.
Thank you.
Councilor Murphy? You. So my data research from the 2022 budget told me a lot, and it's what pushed me to call for the hearing to address the lack of athletic opportunities for our students in BPS. And I just want to start by saying, for anyone who's not sure or aware of this, that Massachusetts spends on average $17,000 per student. Boston spends over $24,000, considerably more than other towns and states. We are not a poor school system, we're not. So I'm just gonna start by saying that. And also my data research told me that the total budget has increased more than 35% since 2019, despite enrollment decline, and the BPS investment in student athletics and art offerings remains nearly unchanged since 2009. We only value our students enough to spend $76 per student. This was from the 2022 budget. I know that we said we're going to increase it $22, but that's less than half. That's 47% of the state average, even though we spend a lot more than what other towns and cities pay. And that comes out to less than 1%, 0.03% per pupil. If we believe, which I believe, that athletic and art opportunities equal mental health opportunities that we know all of our students need, they need them and we have to invest in them, then we need to spend more. I can't approve a budget that we're only offering, and if we're not going to properly fund these opportunities for our students, we need to invest more than just increasing the budget to $98. I know we're talking about ESSER funding, but that runs out, and we know what happens in BPS when grants and other things run out. We stop offering those opportunities to our students. So my two questions also, and I know I asked these last week, data requests was for the breakdown of all of our 125 schools. I asked for the capacity at each building, the current enrollment, and then the projected enrollment. And I know one of the slides you had told me, Nate, that that was from October, so we were hoping to get an updated, a more recent, because we know since October of 2021, a lot more families have chosen to leave BPS, and you have that information. And then also the equitable after-school programming and before-school programming for our special ed students. I was a proud teacher at the Henderson School, and even our students there at an amazing inclusion school didn't always have all the opportunities, so I know It's really, really hard for many students, and many students are shut out of after-school and before-school programming because of their EL or special ed status. So I asked for that information also. So those are my two current requests, and also wanted to reiterate that I think many, or if not all of my colleagues agree that a larger investment in athletics and art is needed for our students now more than ever.
Madam
Thank
Chair, can I
you.
briefly respond, ask a clarifying question about one of her questions?
Yeah, of course.
Councilor Murphy, if you can, because I've heard the numbers of the state average and different numbers that have been raised here today. I'm wondering if someone can provide me those citations so we can look them up as well and compare apples to apples.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course.
Clarifying question. In the breakdown of all schools' requests and capacity of each building, there are a couple of different capacity numbers that we could potentially provide. The one, is it?
I think it came out of the conversation about the hard conversation we need to have about looking forward in school closures. And when I brought up the fact that there's only 402 students at Brighton High, and we have 428 students at the Kilmer, we know that many of our school buildings are very under-enrolled. And we have empty classrooms in some, and others are busting at the seam with long waiting lists for families to get into. So
The building.
a building capacity to see where does that line up? Because we need to have those conversations about which schools do we need to close as enrollment continues to decline. Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Lujan?
Very excited that I get to ask all my questions. So I'm going to start with athletics. I asked a question about how many schools have indoor gymnasiums and the breakdown, right? That's really important. It's a data baseline that we're trying to create so that we know where we're fighting for. I also will just say, I'm an at-large city councilor. We're also looking at this as an issue of equity. To the extent that you are able to break down the schools by neighborhood, I started taking a peek at this this data. That would be really helpful for not only me as an at-large, but for all of our city, all of our fellow city councils. If you're able to break that information down by neighborhood, that would be really helpful. Next question is, yesterday, just happened to have some time, was looking at the Sunday Globe, was looking at their tribute to winter high school athletes, and the lack, there were just so few BPS students that were being recognized as winter scholastic athletes, and part of it is back to these questions of how much we're investing in sports, and are we allowing our students to meet their potential? Yes, I know there's a factor of that these private schools recruit our kids, and but I think that there are students who decide not to go to private schools and to play sports in our schools. So how are we supporting them? Next question is, I guess that related question is, do we reflect our commitment to sports excellence and accessibility in how we pay our coaches? So more data on how coaches are paid and how we can be more competitive in that space. We can't, well, what did you say? We're the best. We're the best? Oh, I know we can be a lot better. I have friends who are coaches, and I know that this is a big area of concern, that we don't affirm the dignity of what they're doing and how we're paying them. How do we expect to have strong sports programs if we're not, getting really quality coaches? I also, when I was looking at the Globe, they also honored a bunch of coaches, and I did not see any BPS teachers. I mean, that could be a reflection of, the Globe isn't the end-all, be-all, right? It could be a reflection of a lot of things. But I'd like to see more BPS faces. I'd like to see more black and brown faces. That was missing. Next question is, what is the status of the sports program at Madison Park? We know the students there are really itching, especially for more girls programming around sports at Madison Park. So what is the status there? If we could give us a summary and the work that we're doing to increase sports offerings at Madison Park, that'd be great. I asked a question about how our sports programs funded and what are the determinants of what schools get what funding. And then in the budget, there is a line item slated for $1.2 million for new sports offerings. What is that for? Like the sports types in schools, I think that would be helpful. Next bucket of questions in after-school programming. How many schools don't offer any after-school programmings after school? And what percentage of after-school programmings are run by BPS staff versus partnerships? Next bucket is tutoring, especially in response to COVID. How are tutoring programs responsive to the learning loss that has happened during COVID? And is our tutoring relying mostly on BPS staff? I know that, there was an article recently, I forget what, in a major newspaper talking about how tutoring, a lot of private tutoring companies have come up to help schools deal with the learning loss. I'd just be curious in terms of like, what do those partnerships look like, and what is the list of tutoring services we're using? And is that an area where we need help? Are we doing a good job of making sure that we're matching the learning loss that has happened during COVID, along with the equity issues of who needs additional support? Are we doing a good job of getting students that tutoring? I think my question on summer learning, I think private schools are able to offer their summer learning options earlier. Is it possible for us to move up in our communications, what we offer? Maybe this year it was difficult because of COVID, but is that another way that we're able to get the word out sooner and earlier to our families? And I think you answered that question. It says, a question I have here, as a percentage of total students during the year, how many students in total utilize BPS summer learning opportunities? It sounded like the answer is 5,000 students, or is that the target?
Target's actually, well, it depends on if you're talking about programs including ESY and high school recovery. So it could be 8,000 or it could be 18,000 if you're including, more by invitation, close the gap type programs.
Okay, I'd just be curious as to actual versus what is our target goal, and what is the science behind what you put your target goal as in terms of participation in summer programming? Because that statistic that you offered was fascinating, right? 2/3 of the opportunity gap can be explained away by summer learning, right? So we need to make sure we're getting the super majority of our students in summer learning programs. And then in terms of partnerships, I think this is the corollary to a question that Councilor Mejia asked, is what are the organizations with the largest partnerships at BPS? And what does that look like? I guess it would be top 5 per number of student and per dollar spent, right? Because sometimes there's an efficiency when you have large partnerships, but sometimes there isn't. And so I think that's what that question would be getting at, to see if are there efficiency gains when you have these big organizations that have all this money, but if there are no efficiency gains, then we have more work to do partnering with small organizations. So those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone for being here.
I have some questions. Just to clarify, let me actually put on record the questions that I sent to you just for the equity questions. So please indicate which zip code, neighborhoods, and district the expense will fall into. So specifically to services, if for example, after school, and maybe we can break it down by program. We want to understand exactly which schools are getting these after-school programs, which schools will have arts, which school will have music, and separate arts specifically like visual arts or any other type of arts from music, because I think that's also sort of different opportunities there for grants and other funding. And of course STEAM, so separate science from art as well. We want to understand exactly if you have a science building, if you have labs, which schools have them. Then we had questions about which schools are actually in need of facility help or whatever. And you said that you were doing a full study, but I know that you have a list somewhere that tells you what schools need water fountains, what school needs a boiler, what school, you do have an inventory of that. And if not, then can we contact the principals to send in their list of what is missing in their school, from art to service to nurse to social worker, liaisons, and so forth, right? So then we ask you to give demographics of your employees, and I see that there's like some sort of like chart there, but it doesn't actually break down, and then there's like tiny little numbers at the bottom explaining the demographics of teachers. But if you can also explain in terms of like inclusionary sort of efforts that you're doing, how much money are you putting into Black teachers, or we talked about fees, right? That paraprofessionals have to like take exams in order to go into different programming or levels. Can we get the monies that's being invested for those Black and brown teachers to encourage them to either be employed or to move up to another level? And then in the RFI, again, we talked about please provide actual FY22 spending and projected actual FY22 spending on pace, and where has your spending FY22 so far exceeded or contracted against your FY budgeted amount. I asked you to, and then there's questions under that, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but it talked about language access and departmental financial and personnel resources devoted to language access. So it does actually break down that, it asks you to break down that information as well in there. And then in personnel, breakdown of departmental employees, so not just the teachers, but also in the departments, so by race and gender, and then pay, right? We wanted to know if Boston is leading by example and with an equitable lens. And so how much are we paying our administrative staff, how in the school building or any other, and we know what it looks like. We're not going to be like, oh my God, mostly white men getting paid the most. We know that. We want to just put it in simple terms in a presentation that we can show the public so that we can encourage more engagement. Did you need?
Can I ask one quick clarifying question on that last one? For the demographics and compensation, I had understood that to mean for the school department, but do you want it for each of our individual departments, like every individual? We can provide that. I'm just making sure I understand.
Yeah, I think you can do that for example, for your headquarters, and then you can do that for schools.
Got it. For each school individually, or all of them together?
Oh, no, all of them is fine.
Okay.
If you do one for teachers, one for principals, and one, for example, for upper management or administration, if you do one for finance, we want to know is it 90% all Black people getting paid the most in finance department? We want to know those things. If your department has more non-minority racial demographics in the top 10 wage earners, what efforts are you making to ensure, and I think I already spoke to that.
Yeah.
How often does your department perform salary wage scale analysis? And that department is all of BPS, obviously.
Right.
Does the department use racial demographic or metric and equitable pay scale analysis adjustments? That was a question. Yeah. Are employees with additional language competency compensated? And if more, how, what? If not, explain. Is the department experiencing challenges hiring BIPOC employees? And if you are, then bring us that information. And what are your efforts to do otherwise to see other results? A breakdown of your contractors, and I think a lot of my colleagues have brought that up already. So minority-owned, women-owned, the things that Councilor Mejia is asking about. For the top 20 largest contractors, please explain your efforts to ensuring contractors also meeting city's 25% utilization threshold of minority and women. And so we do that with BRJP construction jobs, but I know that you also have capital jobs or projects, so are you following that as well? Is technical assistance provided to minority and women enterprises? And if somehow you're supporting to encourage the increase of minority and women enterprises, does your department have plans for other engagement for minority and women enterprises? And then for me, in particularly, it's going to be super important in terms of budget, right? Now we get to numbers. If we look at the questions that Councilor Mejia and Councilor Lujan and Councilor Murphy's speaking of, and particularly all of you quoted per pupil. So I have to reiterate that because that's not coming back to me, and we can't have that conversation because we can't fully assess if we know that 60%, I think you said 60% of schools have arts, right?
To clarify, 67% have it twice weekly
67% has it twice weekly.
at the pre-K to 8 level.
Okay, so like if you take all services, right? If you take everything that is extracurricular or services per pupil, if you give us a breakdown in one sheet, in one report, it would be so easy for us to have this conversation, because then we would actually be able to properly assess what is going on. So you guys talk about the whole child, right? Right? You said you wanted to, your goal is the whole child. That's what you said. And so if it's the whole child and you're talking about mental health, you can't talk about mental health without us understanding if the kids are eating crap. You can't talk about mental health if the kids are not exercising. Can't talk about mental health if we're not addressing basic needs, social determinants of health at home. So social workers, liaisons, parent partners, external contractors. How are we addressing that? Do we have an assessment? If we don't, then we know where to start. So for what you have, for social workers, for nurses, for liaisons, for FCOCs, for mental health providers, for psychologists, for external, any contract school-based mental health services, for anything else that you can think of. So then art teachers, right? Then after-school program, if only 2,000 kids are going, or I think you said 8,000, sorry? 8,000 kids are going, then what's missing? And who applies? And are people on waiting list? We can't assess this without a full report. So put that in one report, and then we can say, oh, we know that this whole achievement gap thing is happening because of these areas. And then we could properly, we're not analysis, we're not budget analysis, right? But we can at least have a conversation about understanding where the gap is and what services are missing. Does that make sense?
I really appreciate that, Counselor, and I think I would love to take you up on the opportunity to have a deeper conversation. Happy to do it here as well. I think for some of the questions that you just asked, I think we have attempted to provide an answer in good faith and may have misunderstood and are happy to clarify.
Okay, let's talk about that. You said, you gave me this report and you broke down annual spending.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know why this is in the equity thing that I asked for, because that's not, like, then it doesn't actually give me demographics, it doesn't actually break down percentage of women or minority, like, you just basically gave me the report all over again from the last one. So I wanted to just extend patience or time or grace,
I appreciate
whatever,
that.
to say, hey, maybe I'm not explaining it correctly, right? So then that's what we're doing now. And I think that this is hard for both of us. It's not this, right? It's this, like, we have to do that with each other. And I'm just saying, please don't feel any kind of way about this. This is nothing to no one personally. This is just saying that we as a council cannot continue and properly have this conversation. It just feels like we're just like every week we're disappointed. Like every day, every time we're like, oh, but wait, what about that information that I asked? And then if we don't have it in real time, how are we having that conversation? And if you're gonna give it to us later, and I hope this is an example to all the hearings to come, because I want to be more genuine about how we have this conversation. So I want that information here. I thought we were gonna have it today, and I'm going through this thing that you sent me. It does not give, it's not a user-friendly, by the way, right? Because it's just a copy of the report from last time. It's information from last time. It's not user-friendly. This is not for public consumption. So I'm asking you to give it to me for public consumption, and you're saying you gave it to me? I can't post this. I can't like actually expect anyone to understand to go through this, and that's what I think. And it's not that I don't understand it. Right. It's that you gave me the same information from last time. So it doesn't actually address, like, in a way that that we can digest it.
Okay.
So it's not just for us, it's also for the public in engaging the constituents, and that's not helpful.
Okay.
if we had the time, and I think that we're headed to asking Council Flynn if he has any questions, and Council Mejia has more questions, if we had more time, we'd go one by one, and I would show you that you're not answering the questions, but I don't want to do that here because I think we could do that one-on-one.
That's fine.
Councilor Flynn and then Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll be brief. The couple of questions I wanted to ask is the certified art teachers. How many certified art teachers do we have compared to non-certified art teachers? And the breakdown of the certified art teachers and the non-certified, male to female, or in ethnic breakdown as well would be helpful. I'd like to see the comparison of those. The other issue I've been focused on is HVAC systems in our schools. This may have already been discussed, but I want to know, does every school now have a HVAC system that is working? And as we go into the start of a new school year in August, will that air condition be on throughout every classroom? Or will we be opening windows when it's 90 degrees? But I would like for us to do a walking tour, the facilities team to do a walking tour to make sure that the HVAC is working, not just in every school, but in every classroom. That's what's really important. It might be working in the school, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's working in every classroom. Madam Chair, those are the only questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Mejia?
This opportunity, Madam Chair. Just curious, are you guys familiar with the Boston Youth Wrestling Program? Right. Are they a partner with BPS?
They work with some schools. I don't know if it's a district-wide partnership or if they've, formed partnerships with schools.
The reason why I ask is because, we've been talking about partnerships, and there's so many organizations that are doing sports-related programming through their nonprofit status, so that they could be really good partners in terms of supplementing, right? And creating more opportunities for young people to have access to different types of opportunities. There's also a golfing program. It's a young man. He's an entrepreneur. He's trying to create an opportunity for young people to have access to golfing. Black and brown children usually don't see that as a sport that they can pursue. So there are a lot of great examples out in these streets that I would recommend that either you Google, you research, you ask, and then you create opportunities for those folks. Because sometimes we can't expect people to come to us. We have to do everything in our power to create opportunities for them to see that these opportunities exist. So I'm just gonna throw that out there as something that you all may want to consider. Madison Park, I always talk about Madison Park. We talked about arts funding, and I'm just curious, they have a whole media arts lab. What are the investments that are being poured into Madison Park in terms of arts? I'd like to come back with some return on investments on that. I'm also curious about equipment for sports. I know we talked about $98 per pupil spending, but I'm just curious about what the equipment budget looks like across the district in terms of access. Someone asked us, because I've always talked about creating space for people to bring their questions to us. Someone asked about a program. This is a this is a sports-related question. There was a program called Scholar Athletes, and I'm just curious why we lost that program. If you could just tell us, you could tell us why, if you have the answer now.
Yeah, during the pandemic, unfortunately, Scholar Athletes made the difficult decision to fold as an organization.
Okay.
May I also add, I just wanted to go back to the Boston Youth Wrestling Program. They are in 9 of our schools right now.
Yeah, 9, and there's 125, so I'm just saying there's more opportunity for scaling and increasing. So that's great to hear. Thank you for that, Denise. So for the sports, I'm just curious, I've heard from a lot of teachers that are teachers, but then they also are phys ed teachers, like they wear multiple hats, and I'm just curious in terms of data, how many phys ed teachers we have that are actually phys ed teachers, not science teachers acting like phys ed teachers. So just really curious about kind of what that looks like, because I know we're just trying to make ends meet, but at what cost? So I'm just curious about making sure that when we come back with data, I want to know phys ed teachers that are actually phys ed teachers and are serving that role as the same as art teachers that are actually art teachers, not EL teachers that are acting like art teachers, right? I want to make sure that we understand what that looks like. And then I'm curious about feedback about the needs of the type of programming. I'm just curious about how we go about deciding what type of programming we're going to be offering, what focus groups have we done, what feedback have we gotten from families, educators, principals, about what they want to see in their schools. I'd love to know whether or not your ideas reflect what we're hearing out in these streets, right? I just want to make sure that we are providing the people, the educators, the students, the families, and the principals what they would like to see, and are those date? It seems like Nate wants to say something.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Is that specifically about arts programming, or?
That's all types of enrichment.
All types of enrichment.
Yep. I want to make sure that we always talk about data and accountability, data-informed decisions. What role has community, educators, principals, students played in informing the budget that you are presenting us here today? I would be curious to know what voice, if any, people have had in that process. And we've asked a lot, and I just want to just end with at least my acknowledgement, right? And I think Councilor Lara said it best. We expect BPS to work miracles, and we're always asking you all to do more, and oftentimes with less, right? So I want to personally acknowledge that it is not easy to do this work and to serve the needs of so many families, especially in an urban district setting, right? So I want to acknowledge that. In that same vein, I also want to acknowledge Councilor Tanya Anderson's line of questioning, because we don't want to continue to replicate bad behavior, and that this budget season is going to take on a very different look, right? In terms of accountability, in terms of our return on investment, we want to really make sure that when we come around next budget season, that we have a different way of showing up, and that our constituents are asking and looking to us to make sure that our return on investment reflects the conversation that we're having here today. And so I think we have a responsibility and an opportunity. It's all in how we choose to do this. And to Councilor Flaherty's point, it is disheartening that we only get to do this once a year. I'm looking for other ways for us to engage with the district, because once a year is not enough. And I think that interventions and things change, the communication and lack thereof. We need to increase our transparency. We need to increase the way we communicate and engage with the council, because we can't help you if we don't know what the problem is. And I think that this is why we always find ourselves in these sort of situations, which is the back and forth. And while we do appreciate you all showing up today and ready to answer our questions, I just think that the level of questions that we have need to be a lot more sophisticated. And if you don't understand what we're asking, it would be a better use of our time if you are able to say, this is what I'm hearing you say, and then And if you don't have it, you don't have the answer, and that's okay. It's somewhat, and I go back to Nate, it's an insult to my intelligence when I feel like you're filibustering here. And that's what sometimes it feels like. Like just don't feel like we're getting the hard truth. And I would rather the truth than a salesmanship. This is not, you're not selling me a budget here. I'm not going to buy a budget. So it's important for us to come into this chamber and recognizing that we have a responsibility to ensure that this budget reflects the needs of the district. And if it doesn't, then we need to come to terms with that, because I'm not going to approve a budget that is not going to have a return on investment. I won't. And Mayor Wu needs to hear this. You all need to hear it. I'm not going to approve this budget unless it reflects this moment and the need that it's going to take for us to get the situation right. Because ultimately, as the chair of education, I'll be held responsible for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman here. I think it would be, first we have, is Ruth Mercado Zizo? Is it Zizo? Yeah, Zizo. Zizo, please join us at the mic over there. Yep, you're here to testify? Yes. Absolutely. If we, councilors, if you could give us a moment. We are probably we're gonna hold this hearing again.
Okay.
But we don't want to waste your time.
I appreciate that, and I can come back when it gets rescheduled as well. Well, good morning. My name is Ruth Mercado Zizzo, and I'm the Vice President of Programs and Equity at EdVestors, an education nonprofit whose mission is to advance equitable, meaningful education that prepares every Boston student to activate their power and shape their future. I am here today to support BPS's continued investment and commitment to quality arts education for all BPS students. Over the last 13 years, we have partnered closely with BPS, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, local foundations, schools, the higher education, and arts and culture community on BPS arts expansion to increase access to quality arts education for all BPS students, especially during the school day. Through a focus on consistent goals, measured and published annually, much progress has been made, resulting in BPS being considered a leader in arts education nationally. Today, nearly 17,000 more students receive arts education compared with 2009. One of the biggest drivers of this change has been the increase in certified arts teachers working in our schools. There are more than 300 arts teachers in the district compared to 160 in 2009. These are all publicly funded positions indicative of the priority school communities have placed on a strong arts education for their students. Led by Tony Beatrice, who you heard from earlier, a robust visual and performing arts department provides valuable professional development and tactical support to schools and teachers. BPS Arts Expansion has also strengthened the connection between BPS and the arts and culture community, with arts organizations working in partnership with schools year after year, engaging in delivering quality, culturally responsive instruction to students, and becoming an integral part of school communities. BPS Arts Expansion supports and collaborates with nearly 50 arts and culture organizations partnering with schools and facilitates a peer learning community and network of more than 100 arts partners committed to the same goals. As you've heard today, nearly 100% of pre-K through 8 students receive weekly arts instruction, and today 67% of pre-K through 8 students receive twice weekly arts instruction, up from less than 10% in 2009. On the high school level, we have nearly tripled the percentage of students with arts access since 2009, while also working in close partnership with the district and arts organizations to increase the number of students who graduate meeting the Mass Core arts requirement. This increase in arts education access has resulted in quantifiable, positive educational outcomes for students. Last year, as you've heard, we released a report detailing the positive effects increased arts education has had on BPS students over the last 11 years, and looking at BPS data of over 1,500 variables and 615,000 student-level observations. The study found that increases in arts ed positively impacted student engagement through increased attendance, participation in class, and a sense of school belonging, as well as increased parent engagement and a reduction in chronic absenteeism. These outcomes are especially significant as BPS continues to navigate and recover from the pandemic. As you consider the FY23 budget, we applaud the district's ongoing commitment to the arts as integral to every student's education and support the vital role that arts teachers, teaching artists, arts institutions, the higher education community, and youth arts organizations play in the education, development, and support of BPS students and their communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ruth. We appreciate your testimony. Okay, so we're going to close. Council Murphy probably has additional questions, but if we can create the chart, maybe just a couple of columns by, so like when you're answering how many social workers or per pupil, then you can do a total amount in number, and then you can do percentage, right? You can do it like that if it applies to the question. But if you can keep it all in one chart, that would be great, because then we're assessing everything together. Or if you want to do by school, which is more work, because then you're listing 25 schools and all that it entails. Can I finish this one sentence? All that it entails. So you're either doing a chart per school or you're giving me the full thing. Either way, it's just columns and you're just answering the numbers, right?
So for each type of position, number of people that is, or number of full-time equivalent, the ratio that results in, and then the percentage of staff of?
The percentage by the number. So if it's, what does that mean in terms of like, if you need 120, but you only have 50?
Got it.
Okay. And I think that way we can see more visually, and we can see the numbers on paper, and then we can understand how you're allocating these monies.
Got it.
Does that make sense? Because if you say to me, we actually need 100 speech pathologists, but we only have 20, but you're putting a certain amount of money toward it, we can be able to compare it and say, by ratio, they're only at a like 2 by 10 mark, and we can actually say, oh, this doesn't make sense, right? But we can't properly do any kind of analysis if we don't have these numbers in front of us. Because we too have this idea of seeing or addressing the whole child. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. So as I stated at the beginning of this hearing, I believe partnerships are wonderful for our athletic and extracurricular opportunities, but I want to reiterate before this hearing ends, and I'm happy that it will be rescheduled so we have more information, that we're not a poor school system. We have a $1.3 billion budget, and you're asking for us to increase it to 1.6. We spend more per pupil than most other cities and towns, so we shouldn't be piecing together our athletics and art programming. We should be fully funding it. And I get this question all the time. Where does the money go? Is it upper management at bowling? I don't know where all the money goes, but we should be able to find more than $98 per student to fund what we know is critical for their progress and their health and welfare. And one question that was asked last week at one of the hearings was, if you could have anything, like what would you add or what would you take away? And most of you did take the easy way out, which maybe I would also if I was sitting over there, but you said what you would add. But with such a big budget, I really do think we have to look at what are we going to be taking away to make sure that we are fully funding the things that myself and my counselors are going to be advocating for. So I just wanted to end with that. Thank you.
So we're going to close this meeting, and we'll postpone the next one as well. We'll see you on Thursday. Please take your time to answer our questions.
Chair, we're not, if we're going to postpone the 2 o'clock today, so I did not know that. I think it just might be helpful, at least for me, because it takes me a while to process, for us to have the 2 p.m. and get our questions on the record and see where the gaps are, because I found this to be really helpful. Because then if what I worry about is I had a lot of questions for the 2 o'clock too.
I understand.
So
You
I just,
feel this
I feel like
process-
we should have the 2 p.m. My recommendation is that we have the 2 p.m. We get our questions, we see how prepared they are.
In the event, we need to do that twice
And
too.
then in the events they're not ready to go, then we will get our questions on the record and give them an opportunity to prepare themselves, so then when they come back on Thursday, we're not reinventing the wheel and we're ready to hit the ground running. That's my recommendation.
What I don't want to do is have to just ask questions. It does not feel good to sit here and hold people to something that they need more time to prepare. I would prefer that we get a bunch of questions together for the next session, email it to them, and then we can give them proper time and start over. That is the statement that's what I think that we need to do. I think we need to step back. We need to submit the questions. We need to be okay with the answers that they send us and say, okay, they've sent them to us, and so we can read it at least a day or two in advance, and then come back to the hearings. What's been happening is I'm getting the presentations the night before, then I come in the morning at 10 or 9 p.m., and then I come in the morning, and we have not even processed any of it. So I do think that they need time.
No, I appreciate that. I was just saying, since we're already scheduled to be here at 2, to utilize that time to just do an assessment as how much they are ready to prepare, especially because we're going to be talking about public safety, we're going to be talking about a lot of social and emotional learning. There are a lot of things, and it'll just be helpful for me in terms of process to understand where they're at and how much command they have of the content area, because it just helps me better prepare to support the process. That's the only thing that I ask, just because we're here for the 2 o'clock.
If you, the panelists, I'll leave it to you. If you feel, I don't want to waste your time, so I don't want to come and then say we want to reschedule that one again. If you feel that we can come this afternoon and we'll be okay, then I'm okay with that. I don't want to waste anyone's time. I wanted to give them time to regroup everything, because they know that these questions are going to be sort of the same for the same topics moving forward.
Yeah, so
if you need the time, if not, we'll come back at 2.
It's a little bit of a difficult question to answer. I'm happy to support the council in getting information whichever best way you think. Certainly getting the detailed questions ahead of time helps us. And I would just note, it's a different panel this afternoon, so it's a slightly different group that will be coming to talk about social and emotional learning and wellness. So
I think Council Mejia is looking forward to this because it's very close to her, near and dear to her work and heart. And she may need more time. And if you need that, then I'm here for you. We can do it.
Thank
and then
you.
If we need to come back again, we'll come back again.
I appreciate it. I think that in the spirit of honoring kind of like the process, it would be incredibly helpful for us to be able to have the 2 p.m. hearing, because it gives me a better assessment of the baseline of how these folks are coming in, how much time they're going to need, where they're at in terms of having a clear understanding of what we're going to be asking. And
if you want to go through that with them, we can go through those RFI questions as well with them. What we're finding, and Mr. Cruder, to your statement that you just made, we did send you the questions in advance. We're just not somehow connecting, and me getting the questions answered or half answered to the same sort of presentation that I got before, and then getting it sort of last minute is not helpful. And I think I'm trying to take responsibility in terms of facilitating this and say, look, I'll be open to doing whatever it takes in order for us to do this job properly. But I also want to ask you to do the same and say, yeah, you know, take responsibility and say, yeah, we did not respond, or we did respond last minute. And so the statement of if you get them in advance is kind of unfair.
Sorry, if I could clarify, I really did not mean to insinuate that our lack of preparation or the perceived lack of preparation was in any way the fault of the council. I do apologize that you received the presentations this morning and not 2 days in advance as promised or as requested. That is certainly my fault, and I take that responsibility for the team. I also apologize that we have not fully responded to the questions that you have sent and requested us to respond to ahead of time. I authentically and genuinely felt like we were responding in the right way, and so it is not meant to, I think it was characterized as dodge and weave. I do view my responsibility as providing the best available information to you as a council. The fact that you both feel that we are, and the full council, not just, this isn't just about, of course, you two. The fact that you don't feel like I've done my job of being transparent and clear with our community, you know, is something that I need to work on, and we will come
I'm
back
reserving
better
judgment.
prepared. Well,
I'm reserving judgment. I don't have the same position. I don't feel that way. I feel that the process is one, again, that takes patience and that takes respect and transparency. And to do that, I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. We just have to continue to do the work and not be upset with each other. For example, when I say let's take a step back, it doesn't mean that we need to fault anyone. It just means that we need to take a step back. We need to review it. We need to do it differently. And I think that that's what's missing here. I'm not here to point fingers at anyone. I think that everyone here is perfectly fine. We just have to be patient with each other. The process deserves for us to take a step back. So let's take a step back and take your time in answering those questions, and then let's dig so we can understand. If we don't understand this, we cannot give it to the public. And this is what this is about. For decades, things happen in a way that the public can't consume it, that the single mom or the single dad somewhere inundated with stressors in a job and doesn't speak English does not get it. Not because they're cognitively whatever, even if they were, we should be accommodating them. Not because they have issues, but because they have other stressors that are priorities. And so we have to be fair in this process. To do that, I have to lead by example. I'm asking you to forgive me in whatever way I'm communicating so that I can be a better tool to you so we can get the job done. I don't have that position. I don't know if you're dodging and weaving. It doesn't matter if you are. I believe that you mean well, and we're gonna get it done together. That's what I think. And we're gonna do this work. We're all doing this work. We're gonna do it together. That's what I feel.
I definitely appreciate that and look forward to doing exactly that in the next few hearings.
Thank you. You want to come back at 2. I think they need a break, but you want to have this, you want to go through it. That's fine. We can do it like this. We can see if they have the answers to questions if you want.
Thank you, Chair, and I really do appreciate the level of thoughtfulness and mindfulness that you're bringing into this process, because we're in a different time, right? Everything seems so oftentimes transactional, and we have an opportunity to model behavior that is transformational, right? Where, yes, I know I could be a little pit bull. I used to call myself a chihuahua. Now I've upgraded in the way that I show up, right? And it's okay. And I think that to Councilor Fernandez-Anderson's point is that it's not about us versus y'all. We're in this together. And if we could choose to experience that in that way, then our families will benefit from it. But if we don't sit here and bring these questions to you with the sense of urgency that this time requires, then you may not hear it in the way that it needs to be heard so that you can respond to it with that same sense of energy, right? So I think that that is what we'd love to encourage you all to understand, is that there is a lot at stake. And we're here together, and it's 360 accountability. Councilor Flaherty talked about, he's been at this for 20 years. This is my third budget. The fact is that we have to change the way we do business if we're going to change the outcome. So under our leadership here today with Ways and Means, it's a whole new way. And now we have an opportunity to adapt to another way of how we're going to unpack BPS's budget. And we're all learning on what that's gonna look like. So let's just remain open to the process and understand that we all are accountable. It's not just BPS. I sat here and said yes to a budget that now I'm complaining about. I'm responsible for this. And all of these other counselors that have approved every other budget before me are responsible. But yet, they're not taking that ownership because they're talking to you all about what you haven't done. And that's not fair to you either. So I'm not gonna be that chick come next year that I'm asking you the same questions and then feel like I didn't play a role in the situation that we find ourselves in. So thank you.
Thank you. With that in mind, I'll see you on Thursday. And you can feel free. It's okay. You're not gonna come back Thursday?
I'm not, I just feel like this. I will make my budget, I listen to the budget season, I'm not wasting my time and my saliva anymore in this situation.
If you'd like to step into my office to get clarifications on any of these questions, I'm open. If you feel, I'm sorry, I didn't get the response from you whether or not you wanted to come in at 2. I think you said it was up to me. Is that what you said? It was up to us?
We are prepared to come back and answer questions about social emotional learning this afternoon, including our presentation. So I'm certainly happy to come and answer the questions that we can, and then follow up with questions if we can't. But I do defer to your leadership or the city council in terms of how you want to use your time. I'm certainly not interested in wasting anyone's time.
No, I want to make sure that you're prepared. I was under the impression that you needed time, as you said, in terms of going and preparing or having time in advance. I'll see you at 2, and not because, I'll see you at 2. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.